we have another one. See, I was trying to get this one out yesterday, so I'm kind of pissed. But, it is what it is. This one was a good one, too. So I'm going to tell it today. We have prime Edward Newgate Whitebeard versus the current Blackbeard. In this scenario, they'll be fighting on Hachinosu. Alright? With that being said, Whitebeard in his prime was crazy, boy. He had his Gura no Mi. He was using his Nagi Nacha to the fullest extent in conjunction with his Devil Fruit. And not just his Devil Fruit, his Haki. Armament conquers Haki, conquers coding. This man has observation Haki. He's, a hockey beast. And not to mention a beast of a human being. Blackbeard, on the other hand, he's still, Blackbeard. Blackbeard's a smart guy, right? He understood that he could actually eat two devil fruits. Nobody in the world knew about that. He said, "Cool, let me have two devil fruits. Let me have Whitebeards and mines that I took from Bash." But he still found him by fate. You know, um, those devil fruits are gonna come into play and make this fight, closer than what people think. The mind of Blackbeard ain't to be fucking played with. That's why all these people lost to him. They thought he was just some roly-poly fat guy, and then shit happened, right? But don't think what you're thinking about it, And I do know Blackbeard's like a endgame villain, and I know he's, more powerful than people think he is. And his hockey, I'll admit, it ain't like Whitebeard, right? This Whitebeard especially, right? He's at full health bars. He ain't on life support. He's like 50-something years old. Blackbeard's like 39 or 40, some shit like that. He's still out of shape and shit, but he's still like moving around and shit. He's still making big boy moves. If they were fighting in Hachinosu and he's fighting against Whitebeard, he has certain things that he can do to like help mitigate his, weakness. So like once he turns off Whitebeard's Devil Fruit, his, stats go down a little bit. But guess what? He has the hockey to power through that. So calm down. Don't get out of sorts. You'll find out what I think at the end, right? But physical strength goes to Whitebeard. Whitebeard was throwing around, giants as a fucking old man. And by the time he's like, in his prime days, he was fighting against fucking Gold Rogers for days and days and days. You have to be strong to hold Gold Rogers. Gold Rogers taking out Marine fleets by himself, swinging his sword, and then they're all gone. He said, "Get Garp and send Goku because this shit ain't doing it." He was fighting Whitebeard for 3 days after that. And that's what he did, right? That's what Prime Whitebeard did, shit like that. He did shit on God Valley that was ridiculous, too. Physical strength of Blackbeard, yeah, he's strong, but not like that. He ain't grabbing giants and throwing them like that. Speed goes to Whitebeard for sure. Fat Man cannot move. We don't, he does not have shit like that. He don't have speed. We will never say that Blackbeard has speed. Never have Blackbeard on a list of fast people in One Piece. Never do shit like that. I know you be lying and shit. That's for TikTokers and YouTubers alike. Don't lie to people like that. They don't take a genius to see that. But it's still interesting how this man still wins and stuff, right? Blackbeard, that is, right? We'll get to talking about that in a second. But durability goes to Whitebeard. Not being on life support, he can tank all these attacks that Blackbeard has for the most part. But that's the thing, this Devil Fruit thing, that does come into play with Whitebeard. I know some people forgot about that shit, but I didn't forget about it. So his durability is still better than Blackbeard's though, because Blackbeard's durability goes down because of his use of that Devil Fruit. We talking about the dark fruit. His shit's actually weak as fuck. And then his armament hockey's there, but it's like, but he's still like not the best at using it. Like Whitebeard still has better. So that's why we give it to Whitebeard. Endurance goes to Whitebeard. Whitebeard's fought people for days. Blackbeard hasn't really fought people for days. for what I know. He's trying to not do the long game. He's trying to, go for the decisive blow, decisive kill. Intelligence goes to Blackbeard. See, Blackbeard will see this situation and be like, oh, fuck. He'll be thinking of all kind of shit. He'll be like, I'll have to fucking destroy this island just to win against him. He'll be kind of pissed, too. But at the end of the day, he'll be taking down Whitebeard. So, this prime Whitebeard. So, and in his mind, I'm saying, because he's a thinker, he likes to think strategies. I'm going to fucking, destroy this island, get him, off kilter, fuck with his footing. And also make sure that the ground I'm standing on is actually all right. And then I'm gonna turn his devil fruit off. I'll use my dark fruit, and once his devil fruit ability is turned off, his durability actually goes down a little bit. So once I actually start attacking him and I hit him and shit, he'll feel those blows. Um, Even if it's just prime like me, and he's still tough, right? Like we already gave him the durability, right? But he's still scheming and finding a way to win. And Whitebeard's definitely gonna get his devil fruit turned off during this fight. Don't get it twisted. Um, Experience goes to Whitebeard though. What comes with that experience? He fought against Gold Roger. He fought against he was on the Rock Pirate crew. Blackbeard has his experiences too. He made like real big moves. But he also had a crew with him. So most of that time. You know, Sometimes they didn't act. Sometimes they did. And that's what he did. But Whitebeard mostly relied on his own strength. You know, Making his hockey bloom better and stronger. You know, but his experiences helped him. So that's why Whitebeard is has more experiences. And he just has more. Right? Now close skills go to Black or not Whitebeard. Oh, Whitebeard definitely has close skills. He got some hands and shit. Range skills, I give that shit to Blackbeard. Blackbeard's definitely using his range skills before Whitebeard gets close, trying to damage him from a distance, weaken him from a distance. And he will be able to do that. Recoup Whitebeard. 50-something-year-old Whitebeard is not on life support. He has blonde hair still, and he's still, drinking, and he gets that medicine. He said, "Cool, after drinking that, right?" So he was all right. He was all right to throw down for some more rounds and shit, right? Blackbeard, I don't know him to like be good at recovery. I know, but hacks, I still give that to Blackbeard because like I'll say that in this fight, Whitebeard's not gonna be able to use the dough fruit. Blackbeard still has a dough fruit and he still has hockey. Now his hockey is weaker than Whitebeard's, but it's still something. He has two dough fruits. Two dough fruits is nothing to sneeze at. And then he does have hockey, but not as good as Whitebeard. Like prime Whitebeard. And environment goes to Blackbeard since it's on Hachinotu. With all that being said, prime Whitebeard wins high difficulty against Blackbeard. But he still wins that shit. It's the Conqueror's hockey that does it. And then his use of Naginata with it. Let's say that he does the same shit he did, to Whitebeard. Even though he's primed up and, different. Whitebeard still had the skills to grab his Naginata and cut, Blackbeard. The Conqueror's hockey really helps him win this fight with his Naginata. The only winning condition that Whitebeard has. And then damaging Whitebeard is still tough too. He's gonna get some good hits in, but it's not gonna be enough. So that's why prime Whitebeard wins against current Blackbeard. But be cool on the corner. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below.